Have you ever hit that buy now button and then, just wondered why some things land on your doorstep practically overnight,
Hmm.
while that other thing, maybe that custom-made artisanal item, takes weeks, sometimes even months?
Yeah, it's a really common experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's a fascinating question.
It is, and the answer often, well, it boils down to a really fundamental manufacturing decision: make to order versus make to stock.
Exactly. MTO versus MTS.
So today we're taking a deep dive into these crucial strategies. We're thinking especially about small manufacturers, like maybe many of you listening right now.
Right.
Our mission here is to sort of extract the most important nuggets of knowledge, explain the real-world trade-offs in plain language, hopefully,
Right. Cut through the jargon.
and ultimately give you a practical framework you can start using today to really understand how these choices impact, well, everything from your cash flow to your customers' wait time.
And that impact is, it's truly profound. This isn't just about, what happens on the factory floor.
Right.
It fundamentally shapes how an entire business operates. It shapes the promises it can realistically make to its customers.
Mm-hmm.
And, critically, how much of that precious cash is tied up in inventory.
That's a big one.
It really is.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about finding that sweet spot, that right balance, a balance that's, perfectly tailored for your specific products, your unique business model, and, of course, what your customers truly value. Getting this right, it's a strategic choice. Huge consequences for growth, profitability, everything.
Okay, so let's unpack this then. Maybe start with some quick definitions to get us all on the same page. Because these terms, MTO and MTS, they really are at the heart of it all.
Good idea. Let's start there.
First up, make to order, or MTO. Now the name, well, it pretty much says it all, doesn't it?
It does.
You only start building after you get a confirmed order from a customer. So for you, the customer, this almost certainly means you're going to wait a bit longer.
Yeah, longer lead times are typical.
And you're looking at those longer lead times. But what's the big benefit? What are you getting in return for being patient?
Customization. That's the key. You get something truly unique, built just for you, to your specs.
Like commissioning a piece of art or getting a tailored suit.
Exactly. Then on the other side of the coin, we have make to stock, or MTS.
Right.
With this model, you're building products ahead of time. You're basing it on your best guess of what customers will want. That's your forecast.
So you hold these finished goods ready to ship the moment an order comes in.
Precisely. The immediate upside for the customer is, well, lightning fast delivery. Order it now, and it's practically already on the truck.
Instant gratification.
Yeah. But for the manufacturer,
Mm.
this approach carries a pretty significant inherent risk, mostly higher inventory risk.
Because you're betting on the future.
You're essentially betting on future demand, yeah. If that forecast is off,
Mm.
well, you could be sitting on a lot of unsold product. Or worse, not have enough of what people actually want.
So it's almost like MTO is that bespoke tailor we mentioned, and MTS is more like a ready-to-wear clothing store off the rack.
That's a great analogy. It captures the core difference perfectly. They both serve a purpose, but operate very, very differently.
Okay.
And to really get our heads around the operational difference, we often talk about something called the decoupling point.
Decoupling point. Okay. Also called the push-pull boundary.
Exactly, the push-pull boundary. Think of it as this crucial line right in your production process. It's where your business switches its focus.
Which is how?
Switches from making decisions based on forecasts or anticipation. That's the push part, pushing product forward.
Okay.
To reacting to actual customer orders. That's the pull. Pulling production through based on real demand.
Okay. So where that line sits changes depending on MTO or MTS.
Precisely. In an MTO model, that decoupling point gets pulled way back in the process, often closer to your raw materials or maybe component suppliers. You're only pulling production based on a real customer order. Conversely, with MTS, that line is pushed much, much closer to the customer, right at the finished goods stage. You're pushing product into the market based on what you think they'll buy.
So this distinction helps clarify when each model really fits best then.
Absolutely. Let's break that down. MTO really fits when demand for your product is highly variable, or maybe you're dealing with low volume, but a high mix of products.
So lots of different things, but not many of each.
Exactly. If your customers genuinely value customization over speed, MTO is often the way to go. It delivers precisely that unique item.
Makes sense.
It also works when those longer lead times are perfectly acceptable to your market. Your customers just expect to wait. It's part of the deal.
Right.
And importantly, your margins need to be pretty strong. Strong enough to support making things in smaller batches and handling all those setup changeovers on your production line.
Because changing over takes time and money.
It does. And finally, if your components or the finished goods themselves are super costly or maybe perishable, you absolutely don't want them sitting around gathering dust as inventory. MTO avoids that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Like you wouldn't build a $1 million piece of custom machinery on spec.
Exactly right. Now, on the flip side, MTS fits when you've got predictable and stable demand. Think everyday stuff, consumables,
Like toothpaste or standard screws?
perfect examples. If speed is a key buying factor for your customers, they expect short lead times, a high fill rate.
Meaning they get what they ordered on time, in full.
Precisely. If that's critical, then MTS is often essential. This model really shines with standardized products, things with low SKU complexity, not too many variations.
Easier to forecast, easier to make in bulk.
Right. And if you could achieve economies of scale through that and keep your production line efficiency high, making large volumes, MTS can be very, very profitable.
Right.
And, of course, the model works best when your holding costs are manageable, and crucially, the risk of a stockout, running out of product, and losing a sale is far more expensive than actually carrying the inventory itself.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me, the core trade-offs.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like there's no single right answer. It's always a balancing act.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
Every choice has ripple effects.
We know lead time is longer for MTO, obviously, because you're building after the order. But it's super short for MTS, shipping from stock.
Right. Instant versus delayed.
And inventory for finished goods, it's minimal in MTO, maybe just work in progress, but it's much, much higher for MTS.
Yeah, potentially huge amounts sitting in a warehouse.
So it feels like MTO frees up cash by cutting that finished goods inventory, but
Yeah,
you sacrifice speed. Is that the main trade-off?
that's a huge part of it, yeah.
Yeah.
MTO trades that immediate speed for the ability to customize and, crucially, reduce financial risk tied up in unsold goods. MTS flips that completely. It's all about that instant gratification for the customer, but it comes at the cost of tying up capital and taking on that demand risk.
What about other trade-offs? You mentioned forecast reliance.
Yes, that's critical, forecast reliance.
Yeah.
MTO has a very low reliance on forecasts because you're reacting to confirmed orders. You're not guessing, you're responding.
Less crystal ball gazing.
Much less.
Yes.
MPS, however, has high reliance, which means significantly greater risk if your forecasts turn out to be wrong.
That forecast reliance point feels huge. I mean, for a small business, a bad forecast for MTS, that could be genuinely crippling, couldn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Crippling is the right word sometimes. You're essentially betting the farm on predicting future demand accurately.
So how do you even begin to mitigate that risk? I mean, beyond just saying get better at forecasting, which is easier said than done.
It is easier said than done. Mitigation often involves things like tighter inventory controls, maybe dynamic pricing to shift slow-moving stock, sometimes even intentionally carrying slightly less inventory than the optimal calculations suggest just to avoid obsolescence risk. But honestly, it's a constant tightrope walk.
Wow. Okay. What else? Capacity use.
Right, capacity use. MTO often sees more variable capacity utilization. You'll likely have more frequent changeovers as you switch between different custom jobs. Your machines might sit idle between orders sometimes.
Makes sense. Less predictable flow.
Exactly. MTS, on the other hand, allows for much smoother, longer production runs. You can really optimize your equipment efficiency because you're making the same thing or similar things over and over again.
Better OEE, probably.
Potentially, yes. Then there's the impact on cash flow, which we touched on. MTO generally ties up less capital in finished goods inventory because you don't build them until they're essentially sold.
Cash comes in closer to when the cost goes out.
You got it. MTS, conversely, ties up much more capital in that finished goods inventory sitting on shelves.
Waiting for a buyer.
Waiting. And finally, let's think about stockout risk. It's generally low for MTO. You simply don't promise delivery dates you can't meet based on your known capacity and order queue.
You build what's ordered.
Right. MTS, though, carries a medium to high risk of stockouts precisely because of that inherent uncertainty in the forecast error. You might run out of popular items while being overstocked on others.
So wrapping this trade-off section up, what does this all really mean for a manufacturer's bottom line and, crucially, their cash flow? Because like you said, for a small business, cash flow isn't just some metric on a spreadsheet. It's survival.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. From a purely financial angle, these choices profoundly impact your working capital needs and your cash-to-cash cycle time.
How quickly you turn investment back into cash.
Exactly.
Yeah.
MTO tends to improve cash conversion.
Yeah.
Why? Because you avoid accumulating those big piles of finished goods that haven't been paid for yet. Now, you might still pre-buy some raw materials, maybe for lead time reasons, but the capital tied up is typically lower overall and more flexible. It converts back into revenue much faster, usually as soon as the customer pays for that specific order.
Okay, so MTO is generally better for cash flow then.
Often, yes. MTS, on the other hand, requires significantly more working capital locked up in that inventory.
The inventory you built based on the forecast.
Right. The potential payoff for this big investment, of course, is better customer service, faster delivery, and potentially higher sales volume because the product is readily available.
If the forecast is right.
If the forecast is reasonably accurate, yes. And if your inventory turns over quickly, generating healthy returns on that invested capital. Big ifs sometimes.
So what should people be tracking? What are the key numbers, the KPIs to keep an eye on here?
Good question. There's some key watchlist KPIs you absolutely should be tracking, regardless of your model, but some are more critical for one versus the other.
Okay.
First, inventory turns. Think of it like how many times your total stock sells and gets replaced in a year. Higher is usually better, means cash isn't sitting idle.
Right.
Then days in inventory, often called DII or DSI, basically how long stuff sits around. Lower is better here indicates efficiency in moving product.
Got it.
Then you've got customer-facing metrics like fill rate or OTIF, on time in full, super important for measuring service levels, especially in MTS.
How well are you meeting promises?
Exactly. Also, keep an eye on your backorder rate, and any expedite costs these highlight issues where you couldn't meet demand and had to pay extra to catch up. Signals problems.
Especially costly in MTO if you misquote lead times.
True. For MTS specifically, MAPE, absolute percentage error, or some measure of forecast error, is crucial. You need to know how good your predictions are.
Can't manage what you don't measure.
Precisely. And finally, the big one, tying it all together, cash-to-cash cycle time. How long does it take, in days, to convert the cash you invested in inventory back into cash received from sales? Shorter is almost always better. These are like your business's vital signs for this stuff.
Yeah, that's a great list. So beyond the financials, the dollars and cents, how do these strategies impact the actual making of things? You know, the day-to-day operations, the planning on the factory floor. That's where the chaos or the calm really happens, right?
Absolutely. The operational implications for planning and scheduling are quite distinct between the two. For MTO, you really need to be using finite capacity scheduling.
Finite capacity, meaning you schedule based on the actual available time you have on machines and people, not infinite wishes.
Exactly. You know your constraints, and you need clear order promising rules. This means lead times are quoted very specifically based on the real-time availability of your bottleneck resources, the slowest step, and the current setup load or queue ahead of that new order.
So you promise based on reality, not just a standard number.
You have to. Job or lot costing is also pretty straightforward in MTO. You track material, labor, overhead for each specific customer order. Clear traceability.
Makes sense. And for MTS, how does that look operationally?
For MTS, the whole focus shifts. It's much more about demand planning, figuring out those forecasts we talked about. It's about maintaining safety stock levels as a buffer against uncertainty, and implementing reorder points to trigger replenishment before you run out.
More proactive, less reactive.
In a way, yes. The goal is often to level your production schedule, making the same things or similar families repeatedly to gain efficiency. And you need to protect those bottlenecks, maybe with work in progress, WIP controls, things like Kanban systems, to keep things flowing smoothly.
Standard costing works well there too, I imagine.
Yes, standard costing fits MTS well. Any variances from standard can quickly highlight if process is drifting off track. And just briefly, on the simple stock math for MTS, your reorder point is basically your average demand during your replenishment lead time, plus your safety stock.
Okay, average usage plus a buffer.
Right. And that safety stock itself is approximately some kind of service factor, how often you want to avoid stocking out, multiplied by the demand variability, the unpredictability during that lead time.
Sounds complicated.
It can be, but you don't need to be a PhD statistician to get started. Seriously. Start simple. Use historical data, maybe even educated guesses initially, and then tune these numbers monthly. Adjust as you learn more about your actual demand patterns. It's an iterative process.
Okay, that's reassuring. Start simple, then refine. Got it. Now, let's try and connect this to the bigger picture. We've talked MTO, we've talked MTS, But you might think it's the stark either choice. It feels like that sometimes.
It can feel that way.
But most small manufacturers, they don't actually pick just one model for their entire business, do they? Is it ever really that black and white?
That's an excellent point, and you're right. No, it's rarely that black and white in practice. This raises a really important question. What about the hybrids?
Ah, the middle ground.
Exactly. The reality is that most small and even large manufacturers employ some kind of segmented hybrid approach. It's rarely one size fits all for every single product they make.
So what do these hybrids look like?
Well, a common one is assemble to order, or ATO. Here, you stock generic subassemblies or components, but you only do the final assembly after a customer order comes in.
So faster than pure MTO because the bits are ready.
Exactly. Faster than MTO, but it carries less inventory risk than full MTS because you're not holding finished goods, just the components. Think about Dell computers back in the day.
Right, pick your components online.
Yeah.
Okay, what else?
Then there's configure to order, or CPO. This is where you offer a set of predefined options or modules, allowing for quite fast configuration and quoting at the time of order. Like choosing features on a new car standard engine, premium sound system, sunroof.
Still some customization, but within defined limits.
Precisely. Another really powerful strategy, often used alongside others, is postponement.
Postponement,
Delaying something.
delaying the final differentiation. You keep products as generic as possible for as long as possible in the supply chain. You only customize them at the very last step, often geographically closer to the customer. Like paint color or packaging language.
Perfect examples. Think about importing plain white t-shirts in bulk and only printing the specific graphic design once an online order is placed in the destination country. That's postponement.
Clever. Reduces risk on all the specific designs.
Hugely. But probably the most common and practical hybrid approach, especially for small manufacturers, is implementing a segmented policy.
Meaning different rules for different products.
Exactly that. For example, your A items, your fastest movers, the 20% of SKUs that generate 80% of your revenue or margin, those might be managed as MPS. You'd carry carefully calculated safety stock for them.
Because speed is critical for those big sellers.
Right. Meanwhile, your BC items, the slower movers, or maybe your long-tail variants with unpredictable demand, those might be moved to an MTO or maybe an ATO strategy.
Okay, so how do you decide which product gets which policy?
The key here is analysis. You use ABC analysis segmenting items by their value contribution, like revenue or margin, to identify your A, B, and C performers.
Got it. Find your stars.
And you combine that with XYZ analysis. This segments items by their demand variability or forecastability.
Yep.
X items have steady, predictable demand. Y items have some variability. Z items are wildly unpredictable or sporadic.
So steady sellers versus erratic ones.
Exactly. Using both ABC and XYZ together gives you a powerful matrix. It helps you assign these policies, MTO, MTS, ADO, SKU by SKU, based on data.
Not just guessing.
Not guessing. You're making informed, data-driven decisions about where to strategically place that decoupling point for each different type of product you offer.
That is incredibly helpful because it means you're not locked into one single strategy for your whole product line, which frankly must be a huge relief for a small manufacturer who might have quite diverse offerings.
It's absolutely liberating once you grasp it. It allows for nuance and optimization.
Okay, so now this is where we give you, the listener, a concrete path forward, a practical decision framework, something you could literally tackle in, say, 60, 90 minutes, whiteboard ready.
Yeah, this isn't just theory. It's designed to be actionable. Put it into practice.
Let's hear it.
Okay, here's a 7-step framework you can follow. Pretty straightforward.
Step 1.
1. Segment your SKUs. Do that ABC analysis by revenue or margin and the XYZ analysis by demand variability. Clearly mark your top, say 20%, those are your A runners. Know your portfolio.
Okay, know what you sell and how it behaves. Step 2.
2. Map customer expectations. For each of those segments you just identified, A, B, C, X, Y, Z, figure out what's the acceptable lead time for those customers. What's the required service level? How often do they absolutely expect it to be in stock? And how much customization do they really need or value?
Talk to sales, talk to customers. Got it. 3.
3. Check constraints. Be realistic. Identify your internal bottlenecks, your slowest machine, your most specialized skill. Note your setup times. Also, factor in external things like supplier lead times and any minimum order quantity MOQ constraints they impose on you.
Know your limits, internal and external. Step 4.
4. Select a policy per segment. Now you combine the previous steps. As a general rule of thumb, your runners, high volume, stable demand, maybe AX, AY items, typically go MPS or perhaps ATO. Your repeaters, moderate volume variability BX, BY, CY items, might go ATO or a hybrid with small buffers. And your strangers, low volume, high variability CZ, BZ items, are usually best suited for MTO.
Use the ABCXYZ matrix to guide the policy. Makes sense. 5.
5. Set initial parameters. Get specific. For your MTS items, define your starting minimum and maximum inventory levels. Calculate an initial safety stock level, and set a review cadence so you're checking this weekly, monthly. For MTO items, define your standard quoting rules. Do you need deposits or MOQs from customers? Establish standard lead time ranges you can realistically commit to.
Put numbers and rules on it. Step 6.
6. Align S&OP, or Sales and Operations Planning. This is crucial. S&OP isn't just another meeting. It should be your monthly heartbeat. It's where you sync up what sales expects to sell, what operations can realistically produce or procure, and how finance sees the inventory investment and cash flow implications. Conduct this review monthly with sales, ops, and finance together. Adjust forecasts, fine-tune those inventory targets, and make capacity plans collaboratively.
Get everyone talking the same language. Critical. And lastly, 7.
7. Pilot and iterate. Please, don't try to roll this out across your entire product range overnight. Trial the chosen policies on maybe 10-15 representative SKUs first. Run it for 2 or 3 replenishment cycles. Track those KPIs we talked about, turns, fill rate, lead time. Learn from the data, see what works, what doesn't. Then once you're confident, roll it out more broadly. Iterate.
Start small, learn fast, then scale. That's such a clear step-by-step process. Fantastic. But, I can already see how tempting it would be to just stick to the old way or maybe get tripped up by some common assumptions. What are some of the most frequent pitfalls you see small manufacturers fall into when they try to implement these kinds of strategies? And maybe more importantly, what are the surprisingly easy fixes?
Oh, that's a crucial point. Because these pitfalls are incredibly common, but often they are avoidable with a bit of discipline. One really common pitfall is treating almost everything as MTS for speed. The intention is good, but it inevitably results in bloated inventory, obsolete stock, and tons of tied-up cash.
Trying to be everything to everyone instantly.
Exactly. The fix here is pretty straightforward, though maybe not always easy politically. Be disciplined. Limit MTS primarily to your true A runners. Actively move those long-tail, slow-moving items to an MTO or maybe an ATO strategy. Free up that capital.
Okay, what's another one?
Another big trap is promising MTO lead times without doing those finite capacity checks we mentioned. Sales might just quote a standard 4 weeks without knowing the bottleneck machine is already booked solid for 6 weeks.
Leads to missed deadlines, angry customer.
You got it. Major credibility killer. The fix is simple in concept. Quote directly from your bottleneck's actual availability. And make sure sales has visibility into this, maybe simple visible capacity calendars or load charts they can check before promising. Communication is key.
Makes sense. Any others?
Yeah. A third pitfall is forecasting at the wrong level. Often people try to forecast way too granularly, attempting to predict demand for every single unique SKU variant, which is often nearly impossible, especially for smaller businesses.
Trying to predict the unpredictable.
Right. The fix is usually to forecast at a higher level, like the product family or group level, where demand patterns are often more stable. Then use recent sales mix ratios to explode that family forecast down to the individual SKU level for your MTS planning. It's often much more accurate.
Forecast families, plan SKUs. Got it. One more.
Okay, how about ignoring setup time economics? Especially if changeovers between products are long and costly. This can make small MTO batches seem unprofitable, or make MTS runs inefficient if they're too short.
The hidden cost of switching.
Exactly. The fix depends on the strategy. For MTS items, the fix might be to deliberately increase your production run lengths for the A runners, getting more units per setup to absorb that cost. For MTO, the focus should be on reducing the setup time itself, investing in SMAD, which stands for single-minute exchange of die. It's a lean technique focused on dramatically shrinking that change over time, making smaller batches much more economically viable.
Improve the process itself. Okay, and a final pitfall.
Maybe the biggest one. Having static policies that just don't adapt. You set your MTS levels or your MTO lead times once and then never revisit them.
Set it and forget it.
Yeah, and that's dangerous. Markets change. Demand shifts, variability changes, new competitors emerge. The fix is discipline again. You must recalculate your targets and review your policies regularly. Monthly is ideal for key parameters, but at least quarterly. Your strategy needs to be as dynamic as your market.
That's great advice. Stay agile. Okay, shifting gears slightly. Beyond these internal operations and pitfalls, How do these MTO MTS choices affect relationships with really critical external partners? I'm thinking specifically about suppliers. They're a huge part of your value chain, right? Their capabilities directly impact yours.
They absolutely are. You can't execute MTO or MTS effectively without your suppliers being aligned. Your supplier strategy really needs to mirror your production model.
So how should it differ for MTO versus MTS?
Okay, for MTO, where you need flexibility and responsiveness, the focus with suppliers should be on building flexible supply. This means negotiating for things like shorter MOQs, minimum order quantities from them. You want faster raw material lead times.
So they can react quickly when you get an order.
Exactly. It also really helps to share your potential order visibility with key suppliers early, even before you have a firm customer PO. Let them know what might be coming. And maybe negotiate for dedicated expedite lanes or reserved capacity with them for when you get those inevitable rush MTO orders.
Proactive collaboration.
Yes. And considering things like blanket purchase orders, POs, can also be useful. They can help reserve supplier capacity or lock in pricing without you having to take delivery of all the material at once. Gives you flexibility.
Okay, that makes sense for MTO flexibility. What about suppliers for an MTS strategy?
For MTS, where you're aiming for smooth, efficient, predictable replenishment, your supplier strategy should prioritize replenishment stability and cost. You want reliable delivery from them.
Consistency is key.
It is. You need to work to align their lead times with your own reorder cycles to ensure a smooth, continuous flow of materials into your production. Predictability helps level your whole system.
Match their rhythm to yours.
Right. And especially for high-value components that you use consistently in MTS production, you might consider strategies like VMI or vendor-managed inventory.
Where the supplier actually manages the stock at your place.
Exactly. The supplier takes responsibility for monitoring your inventory levels of their components and replenishing them proactively. This can shift some of that inventory holding cost and management burden off your shoulders and onto theirs, assuming they get good visibility from you. Sometimes consignment arrangements work too.
Wow, that sounds like a potential game changer for working capital if you can set it up right.
It definitely can be, yeah. Requires trust and good systems integration, though.
Which brings me to the next question. All these strategies, finite scheduling, demand planning, safety stock logic, VMI, does this mean I absolutely need to invest in some big, expensive, complex software package to pull this off? Or can small manufacturers start simpler?
That's a really common concern. And the answer is definitely no. You do not need to overbuy software, especially when you're starting out or if your operation is relatively simple.
Phew, that's good to hear.
Yeah. For MTO, often a light ERP enterprise resource planning, or even just an MRP material requirements planning system that includes solid job management features and some basic finite scheduling capabilities can be perfectly sufficient to get started.
Focus on tracking orders and capacity.
Exactly. For MTS, you'll need some capability for basic demand planning, even if it starts in Excel, some logic for calculating and managing safety stock, and a system for triggering replenishment orders. Again, it doesn't have to be super fancy initially.
Okay.
If you're running a hybrid model, which, as we said, is common, then you'll want to look for systems that allow for SKU-level policy control, meaning you can designate this SKU as MTO, that SKU is MTS, this other one is ATO, all within the same system. And having some simple sales and operations planning dashboards to track performance is helpful.
Flexibility in the system?
Right. And remember, you can absolutely 100% start with spreadsheets if needed. Map out your logic, track your inventory, manage your orders, do the process manually first. Then, graduate to more sophisticated software only as your complexity genuinely grows and the manual approach becomes too cumbersome or error-prone. The strategy and the process come first. The software is there to support it, not dictate it.
Don't let the tech tail wag the operational dog.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, let's try and bring this all to life now with maybe a couple of quick mini case examples. What truly stands out to you in some real-world applications of these principles? How did companies actually put this stuff into practice and what happened?
Yeah, these examples really help make it tangible, I think. They highlight the practical benefits and show how sometimes relatively simple changes based on these principles can yield really big results.
Okay, give us one.
Okay, think about a custom metalwork job shop, fairly typical small manufacturer. They primarily used an MTO model, maybe with some CTO elements, configured to order for standard options.
Building unique things for specific customers.
Exactly. They were typically quoting maybe 4-6-week lead times. Operationally, they made a conscious choice to only stock very standard raw materials, common plate sizes, standard fasteners, nothing exotic or customer-specific until an order landed.
Kept their own inventory lean and generic.
Right. And crucially, they implemented a policy requiring a deposit for any rush orders. This did two things. It helped manage customer expectations around true expedite costs, and it improved their immediate cash flow.
Smart. What was the result?
The result was pretty impressive. Their on-time, in-full delivery rate, OTIF, rose significantly. They went from somewhere around 82% to consistently hitting 95%. And they achieved this improvement with less cash tied up in finished goods or unique raw material inventory. They really focused on what they did best, custom, higher-value MTO work, and aligned their policies and communication to support that effectively.
Better service, better cash flow by sticking to their MTO knitting. Nice. Okay, another example. Maybe one leaning more towards MTS.
Sure. Let's take an electronics accessories company. Maybe they make phone cases, chargers, cables, that sort of thing. They did an ABC analysis and found that just 15 specific SKUs, maybe the black iPhone case, the standard USB-C charger, etc., were driving something like 70% of their total sales volume.
They're A-runners.
They're absolute A-runners. So for those 15 SKUs, they implemented a clear MTS strategy. They set a high service level target, say 97% fill rate, and managed them with safety stock and reorder points.
Keep the winners in stock.
Always. But here's the clever part. For all their other products, the less popular colors, the adapters for older devices, the real long-tail variants, they smartly moved those to an assemble-to-order ATO model. They kept the core components, but only assembled or packaged them when an order came in, promising maybe a 7-day turnaround instead of immediate shipment.
Segmented strategy in action. What happened?
The outcome was fantastic for them. Their overall inventory investment dropped by 22%, huge cash saving. And even better, stockouts on their critical fast-moving A items fell by a remarkable 40%. They could focus their inventory capital and production priority on what mattered most while still offering the wider range without tying up cash.
Less inventory, fewer stockouts on key items. That's a massive win-win.
It really is. These aren't just, theoretical gains on paper. They translate into tangible improvements in customer service, cash flow, and overall business efficiency.
Fantastic. These examples make it so clear how powerful these decisions, MTOs, NTS, ATO, segmentation, how powerful they can be when applied thoughtfully. So final question on this track. After you've gone through the framework, made your decisions, maybe run a pilot, and started implementing these strategies, how do you know if they're actually working? How do you know if they're making a lasting difference? What should you be measuring continuously to ensure you're staying on the right track?
That's the crucial follow-through, isn't it? Making the change is one thing, sustaining the benefits and adapting is another. It's absolutely vital to measure regularly to ensure your policies are effective and, just as importantly, to know when to adapt them as conditions change.
So what categories of metrics should be on that dashboard?
I group them into a few key areas. First, service. Are you actually improving the customer experience? Track metrics like OTIF, fill rate, and maybe back order days or back order line items. Are promises being met more consistently?
Okay, service first. What's next?
Second, speed. How fast are things moving? For MTO, monitor your actual order-to-ship time compared to what you quoted. For MTS, look at your internal pick-pack-ship cycle time. Also, keep counting how often you have to expedite orders that's a sign of system stress or failure.
Got it. Service, speed, then inventory.
Definitely inventory. Are you managing your capital investment effectively? Track inventory turns, days in inventory, DSI, and maybe calculate the percentage of your inventory value that's classified as obsolete or slow-moving. Is that percentage going down?
Healthy inventory levels. Okay. What else?
Fourth, cost and capacity. Are you becoming more efficient internally? Look at OEE, overall equipment effectiveness, especially at your bottleneck resources. Track your setup hours. Are they decreasing if you're doing SM&D? And monitor your premium freight costs. Hopefully, those are dropping as your planning improves.
Efficiency gains. Makes sense.
And fifth, specifically for MTS, you need to track forecast quality. Are your predictions getting better? Keep an eye on MAP, mean absolute percentage error, or maybe forecast bias, consistently over or under forecasting, specifically for those important A runners.
How good is the crystal ball?
Pretty much. The absolute key is to review these metrics regularly, ideally monthly, in your S&OP meeting, and be prepared to change policies. If a product's volume suddenly takes off, maybe it needs to switch from MTO to MTS. If demand becomes erratic, maybe an MTS item needs more safety stock or even needs to become ATO. Static policies in a dynamic market, well, that's just a recipe for trouble down the line.
Constant vigilance, constant adjustment.
That's the name of the game.
Wow. We have truly taken a deep dive today into these really strategic choices behind how products actually get to you, make to order versus make to stock. It seems so clear now that it's not just about what you make, but really how and when you decide to make it that truly defines success for manufacturers, whether they're big or small. It's about being deliberate, isn't
It
it?
really is being intentional about where you hold inventory, where you place that decoupling point. And remember, you absolutely don't need to pick just one single model for your entire business.
Yeah, that hybrid approach seems key.
Exactly. What's so fascinating here, I think, is the power of that segmentation we discussed. The ability to strategically place that decoupling point differently, maybe even for every product group. And the power of piloting a hybrid approach that perfectly fits your specific product mix, your specific market demands.
Tailoring the strategy.
Precisely. And, this raises maybe one final important question for you, the listener, to think about. How many of these core principles we've talked about today, principles of balancing speed against customization, cost against inventory investment, forecast reliance against responsiveness, how many of these apply not just to making physical products?
Interesting. Where are you going with this?
Well, think about service delivery, or even how information flows, how projects are managed in your own work, whatever that might be. Aren't there similar trade-offs? Do you make to order for information requests, or do you try to make to stock standard reports? Where's your decoupling point?
It's just something to perhaps mull over until our next deep dive.